A lot of people have been wondering what is going on with the Sony Spider-Man universe right now, and rightfully so. After Madame Webb flopped, it was confirmed that Sony had major plans for Madame Webb and that they were actually really relying on that film. They wanted to make a major franchise out of it, and they wanted to make it a big part of the Sony Spider-Man universe. Unfortunately, it was terrible. It was one of the biggest comic book movie flops at the box office of all time. And after the movie came out, it was reported by The Hollywood Reporter that Sony is changing the plans that they had. In an article titled "Inside Sony's Madame Webb Collapse, Forget About a New Franchise," with the subtitle, "The flop is wiping out an entire plan for a new movie series as the studio becomes the latest superhero studio in need of a pivot." This was going to be a huge part of Sony's plan for the Spider-Man universe, but clearly they are going to go a different direction now, and people are wondering and hoping, is there a chance that Marvel Studios could get the rights back to all of these Spider-Man characters, or could there be a version of a contract between Sony and Marvel to where Marvel Studios essentially just gets to use all of the Spider-Man characters that Sony owns in the MCU? The thing is, this is actually possible now more than ever. Right now, Sony is already reevaluating what they're doing, but if Kraven the Hunter flops as well, then they are basically screwed. And Sony realizes this. That's why they recently pushed the release date for Kraven the Hunter back to December 13th of the end of this year, 2024. They did this so it could come after Venom 3, so the possible flop of Kraven the Hunter would not affect the performance of Venom 3 at the box office. Now, I'm really looking forward to Venom 3, but that's mostly because I kind of trust Tom Hardy more than anything. Unfortunately, it's basically been revealed already that Sony has no idea how to make Spider-Man movies or Spider-Man related movies. And Dakota Johnson, star of Madame Webb, basically outed Sony in an interview where she basically stated how Sony goes about making their Spider-Man adjacent, their Spider-Man related movies. Dakota Johnson outed them in an interview with Bustle, where they were talking about how unfortunate it was that the movie was basically a flop at that point in time already, in which she replied, "Unfortunately, I'm not surprised that this has gone down the way it has." A statement that really makes you think. This, combined with other things that she has said, makes us all believe that she never really had any faith in this movie. But it sounds like, unfortunately, she just got locked into a contract. However, the interview continues with the interviewer asking, is there a reason for that? A reason why she's not surprised, and this is where she outed Sony. She said, "It's so hard to get movies made, and in these big movies that get made, it's even starting to happen with the little ones, which is really freaking me out. Decisions are being made by committees, and art does not do well when it's made by committees. Films are made by a filmmaker and a team of artists around them. You cannot make art based on numbers and algorithms. My feeling has been for a long time that the audiences are extremely smart, and executives have started to believe that they are not. Audiences will always be able to sniff out the BS. Even if films start to be made with AI, humans aren't going to effing want to see those." Now, according to some insiders, Sony was really unhappy with what she said here, but what does she care? She was done with the film, it was terrible, and it sounds like her experience working for Sony wasn't too good either. But here she told us some very clear things about how Sony went about making Madame Webb, and how they probably go about making their other Spider-Man related films as well. One is that they don't really rely on the filmmakers, the storytellers, the artists, basically the people who make the films. They rely on committees, which most likely just consists of executives from Sony. And two, they make their art or their movies based off of numbers and algorithms. And she basically says in this interview, in this quote, she thinks that the executives have started to believe that the audiences aren't smart. However, we are, and really we're looking at Sony like they're the dumb ones. And actually we're looking at them like they basically lied to us, because they basically pitched this whole big Spider-Woman film. Madame Webb, a superhero comic book character with some other different Spider-Woman variations, that was really what was kind of shown to us, with a villain who was very similar to Spider-Man. Maybe their algorithms and numbers told them that, hey, if we put all of these scenes with all of them wearing their actual costumes that they wear for about 5 seconds in the movie, if we put these scenes all over the trailer, people will come and watch the movie. Well, the problem with that is fans aren't dumb, and we realize that, hey, you did that just to get us to watch your crappy movie. Now, a lot of people have lost faith in Sony after that. A lot of people still hold out hope for Venom 3, which they should rightfully do, and I think a lot of people are excited for Kraven the Hunter. However, in the back of their minds, they're pretty worried about it. I am one of those people. I really want it to be good. I don't think it is going to be good. And that takes us to, what does Sony do after Kraven the Hunter? Tom Hardy's done as Venom after Venom 3. This is the end of the franchise that was basically the only Spider-Man related thing that made them money. Keep in mind, they realized that they weren't really good at doing Spider-Man movies, which is why they let Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios use Spider-Man in the MCU. They were going to make the Amazing Spider-Man 3. Kevin Feige told them, look, you're not good at it. It's not going to work. Let me do it. And this kind of pissed Sony off. However, eventually they realized that this was true. They were not doing well with Spider-Man. They just couldn't make successful Spider-Man movies anymore. However, they still seemed to think that they could make Spider-Man adjacent movies with Spider-Man characters for whatever reason. Now, many people argue the contract that they have for the rights to Spider-Man and all of these characters. They have to make a movie every X amount of months contractually, or if they don't, they lose the rights to Spider-Man. So at this point, people are asking, do they even care, or are they just pumping out these Spider-Man related movies just to keep their contractual rights to Spider-Man? And I think most people say that they don't care, which is why this could be the end of the Sony Spider-Man universe. I think this can end in one of two ways, and hopefully it's the better one. But the worst one would be if Sony just decided to continue to do the same thing. Make movies based off of Spider-Man characters that progressively get worse and worse until really nobody shows up to watch their movies. This was clearly the case with Madame Webb. And it also seems like they are really underestimating the audience. Like, a lot of people talked about Madame Webb online and said, don't go see this movie. And also, by the way, they kind of tricked us. The Spider-Woman characters aren't in the movie that much, at least not in their costumes, which is what they really showed us in the trailers. People post this online and other fans hear about it and go, yeah, I was already questioning going to see this movie. Now I'm not going to see it. Or maybe I'll just wait until it's out of the theaters to go see it. This will only get worse. Imagine if Venom is bad. Imagine if Kraven is bad. Then people aren't going to go see these Spider-Man related movies anymore. They might go see them to see how bad they are, might go see them ironically, but that's about it. Because there's only so much a fandom can take, especially if the studio is kind of saying, screw you audience, with the way that they did with Madame Webb and the marketing. This will lead to the end of Sony's Spider-Man universe. They'll keep making the movies, but nobody's going to show up. And to the fans, it'll be dead. We won't really count it anymore as anything. We'll just keep watching Spider-Man in the MCU, which is kind of the other option for Sony, which would still end the Sony Spider-Man universe. But that would be Sony actually license all of these characters back to Marvel Studios. They don't have to sell the rights back, but they could make a new agreement that they could use a bunch of these characters in the MCU, just like they did with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I don't really know why this hasn't been done already. Madame Webb was a massive flop. They lost a lot of money on Madame Webb. They would make more money licensing the characters to Marvel Studios for them to use in the MCU than they would if they continued to make movies. The problem with this is that they would have to essentially redo the contract that they did for buying the rights to Spider-Man in the first place, because that obligates them to make a certain amount of movies within a certain amount of time or they lose the rights. And obviously we don't want such a confusing universe or universes where Sony is licensing characters to Marvel Studios but also making their own movies as well. And I think really the majority of Marvel fans out there would just rather have all of these characters in the MCU instead of in their own off weird little Spider-Man universe. Venom has been the only successful thing for the Spider-Man universe at Sony, and it's done now, and with it could possibly be the end of the Sony Spider-Man universe as well. Like I said, either way, I think it's coming to an end. But what would you prefer? Would you like them to continue to make movies and maybe try to get better, even though it doesn't really sound like that's possible if they're not listening to their audiences? Or would you just like for the characters to show up in the MCU? Now, I know the real answer is we would all just love the rights to Spider-Man, all of these characters to go back to Marvel Studios. Unfortunately, I don't really think Sony will ever let that happen. So let me know what you think about the other two options in the comments down below. Let me know if you are still excited about the Sony Spider-Man universe or if you are as frustrated as I am right now. Let me know in the comments down below. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all things Marvel. And if you subscribe and leave a comment, you're entered in our giveaway for a chance to win a PS5 or Xbox Series X. The winner picks one item and we pick one winner at the end of each month. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.